So, Namaskara. My name is Srinivasa Madanili. Today, I'm going to talk about the state of economy of India and where we stand globally and how we have been doing over decades. I would just want to give global and historical perspectives to about Indian economy. So, let me uh, um, put the presentation to slide share now. In my videos, that's my you know picture is less relevant. It should be the content that's more important. So instead of me just talking, I just wanted to show some text, data, images, so that it becomes much more meaningful, impactful, and credible, right? Rather than it's I think it's a lot better than just listening and seeing somebody's face, right? So there's general perception that so India's economy is doing very well since 2014. In fact, most of the progress has been happening only after 2014. That's how the kind of the various, a lot of so-called experts, media, and so the various propaganda machines that are spreading in various social media platforms, right? So let's look at what is real and what is not so real, right? So and let me move forward. So today, my focus is on where India stands in the global setup compared to other countries, and also how we have been doing historically, not only India, so various countries. Right. This is about quick introduction about me. I'm not going to run through this. May I'll create a separate video at some point in the future to introduce myself. And intentions again, my intentions and disclaimers. I just want to highlight that this is not the this may not be perfect, and I may not know certain facts. I mean, like everyone else, I could be biased as well. And if there are serious mistakes or inaccuracies, I'm ready to admit those things and acknowledge and also correct them. So, what do we discuss primarily today? And so we hear, you know, frequently in the last 5 to 10 years that so India has become the fifth largest economy, and we are in fact this very became so-called fifth largest economy about 2 years ago. Just pushing the UK to the fourth place. UK is 120th of India's population, and they are also the fastest growing major economy. And I'm very proud of both of them. So these are not small achievements, but it took a long time to get there. And fastest growing major economy, yes, I know we were growing faster a decade earlier, but we are slowed down. But still, the given the global this one, so we are fastest growing major economy. So I think let's be proud and happy about it. Right? And there are also projections that are expectations that so we will become $5 trillion economy by 2025, and even $35 trillion by 2047. That is seven times in another 22 23 years. That's significant. um, Hopefully we reach there. And I think there is a it's important and required to think big and long, but at the same time, we really need to make sure. I mean, really need to see what has caused it, overall the fact, and overall the people involved in it, and are we really giving credit to various positives, and also put some blames on some of the people who drag things in the past. And again, some of them are contextual. It's very difficult to. It's always easy to blame somebody on the hindsight, right? So looking back, many times we'll not get the complete picture, right? So it's good to think big and long, but attributing all the success and positives to oneself is terrible. So what we are today is not just because of us; it is because of many couple of generation of hard work. In fact, it's I would say that whatever we are today is not just in the last 5, 10 decades. It probably it can go back to centuries or even millennia, right? So is the cumulative effect of those things. So again, we keep hearing you might have seen these newses, saying that India has become fifth largest economy. That umpteen news results you can search in Google, right? So and as expected, the politicians want to claim all the positives to themselves, and in fact vilify the previous politicians, right? So there is a saying that success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. Okay. So I wish I had put that in text so that it becomes sticky, right? Um, there's also claim that, or rather hope or projection that, India will be $35 trillion by 2047. That is by Mukesh Ambani. He kind of quoted or projected that in January 2024. Same Mukesh Ambani quoted saying that India will be $30 trillion by 2030. This was in 2011 when UPA 2 was in office. And Modi was not even in national picture at all. So he was still confined to Gujarat, right? So we should not give too much importance to these big numbers. A lot of them are generally natural progressions. So let's before giving talking so much about the big things, I want to trying to keep uh, this one. Okay, so we need to understand uh, what is the, I mean, so size, shape, and size of and distribution of global GDP, right? So that we know where we stand globally, and so and also what are our peers and superiors and our the countries below us in terms of the GDP numbers, right? So there are two ways the GDPs are measured based on the currency exchange rate. Sometimes it's also called nominal. Nominal is not a great number. This one word because it's also used for current GDP without accounting for inflation. So it's kind of overloaded. I would rather we want to use currency exchange rate. So I'll talk about that a little later. What is meant by currency exchange rate? Essentially, you calculate all the GDP in a country in local currency and then convert it to US dollar based on the current exchange rate, right? But this is not the best measure of the GDP. So there is another measure called purchasing power parity based GDP. I'll talk about this later. So for now, based on the currency exchange rate, the world is about roughly about 100 trillion dollars as of last year and 105 trillion dollars as of the 2020, right? So US is 27 trillion dollars. China has reached almost $18 trillion, and Germany in the fourth place, 4.46, Japan and 4.21, right? India is at $3.5 trillion as of 2023. So the key thing is, yes, we have become fifth largest, but we were, seventh largest 10 years ago. It's nothing, this is a kind of progression that has been happening that I'll show that the shifts that have been happening over last 10 years. Okay. If you see here, this is the kind of world GDP ranking based on based on currency exchange rates. So the data is there from 85 onwards. This I took it from the Wikipedia. You can see that in 85, India was, I mean, this again, this they will take data from World Bank, World Bank and IMF. These are credible sources. So we put the link here. You can go and check them as well. So in 1985, um, so India was in 10th place, right? Then from 85 later in the 80s, I don't know when it disappeared. Essentially, for next 20 years, we disappeared from in the top 10 economies, right? So we came back to 10th within 10th only in 2010. Okay, and subsequently have been rising. So in 2010 we were eighth place, and 2015 we were in seventh place, right? And into 2020 we were in sixth place, and then now we are in the fifth place. So this progression has been happening. So we missed 2 decades from in 90s and probably mid or late 80s to early 2000s, right? That's when we missed some of the growth. Other countries grew faster than us. That's why we kind of slipped out of the top 10 economies, right? So again, we should remember that none of the great things are built overnight, right? So whether Rome or Hampi, and so it always takes a long time, lot of effort, a lot of people to build anything great. So India is a great country, and it's a work in progress for last at least 75 years, right? Um, so again, let's look at the numbers. Um, the GDP numbers between 1960 and 2020. These are the World Bank numbers. You can go and check data.worldbank.org. These numbers are there. You can download and do whatever you want, right? You can also visualize that. So this is based on the current US dollar. In 1960, India was about $37 billion. Now we're about, $3.5 trillion, right? So 3.4 or 3.5 trillion dollars. In the same period, so you can see the other countries, China going from $60 billion to 18,000 billion dollars. Roughly, it has gone up by 300 times, whereas we have grown by 92 times, and Pakistan has grown 100 times. Let's give credit to them as well. So just because we hate for Pakistan for different reasons, it doesn't mean that we have to go hate or vilify in every area, right? So let's acknowledge that. So UK, though UK and US were much bigger economies, even they have grown significantly. Look at US, so it reached from $500 billion to $25 trillion. This is in 2022. This is World Bank data. Sometimes, we hear that, oh, we reached whatever, 3.5 trillion, fifth largest economy will be $5 trillion, right? And so in the process, there's so much of chest thumping that happens, right? So I just wanted to give some comparison. How long it took US to reach $1 trillion. US is the world's biggest economy. They have, as I said, so as of 23, they have their economy is about $27 trillion. Whereas India's is roughly about 3.7 trillion dollars or so. So if you see here, in US reached $1 trillion in 1969, and they got independence in 1776 from UK, right? I mean, if not, it's a Great Britain back then, right? So it took nearly 193 years to reach $1 trillion. And if you see the latest growth between 2016 and 20, US added $2.4 trillion to their economy just in 4 years, right? And so can we say that, Trump's 4 years were better than first 200 years of USA, and he was better than 44 earlier presidents put together? That would be nonsense, right? So it's whatever Trump, he was largely lucky. In fact, despite we should think that I think probably many Americans will agree that the U.S. grew despite Trump, because institutions, traditions, intellectual and financial capitals are so big, right? So powerful, so broad-based, right? So during last 3 years, Joe Biden has added $6 trillion, right? Roughly about two Indias in the last 3 years. That is the kind of growth they have been having, right? So, just the point here is that whether Trump or Joe Biden has added these big numbers in the last period, it's not just because of them. It is the cumulative results of cumulative efforts, and it's, the decisions and policies and so on and so forth. It is like, adding more fruit yielding trees to the orchard that's already there. So just to give a little bit of context to it, again we see, we keep hearing that, um, oh, we have become the fastest growing major economy in the world, etc. But we are the fastest growing major economy, but our base is also less, lower. That is, so we have our economy is $3.5 trillion. I think we have reached $4 trillion, whereas China is about $18 trillion and the US is about $27 trillion. So, so 7% of the growth, India adds about $280 billion in a year to the global GDP, whereas 5% China adds $900 billion, right? So they're growing slower than us, but they will add $900 billion, and with just 3%, US adds $800 billion, right? So US and India, I mean, China can add one India every 4 to 5 years. So let's, you know, understand this big picture and be humble. And let's work towards, making India big, great. And it's not just the economy alone that matters. There are so many other things we need to consider as well. In fact, I'm really concerned about, economy growing too big everywhere. It's whether it's China, US, or India. So, because that will have a, big impact on the economy, sorry, environment and ecology, and overall sustainability as of the earth, as well as our, societies. So, based on the purchasing power parity, right? World economy is at $166 trillion. And we have grown significantly here over decades. So we were $1 trillion in 1990. And, so we have grown to $12 trillion over, in 32 years. So significant, right? Let's be proud of that. And it has been growing on for some time. India was fifth in 1992, fourth in 2003, and third in 2008, and we have been third since then. So it's a little harder to cross US, China, and US, right? So that's but let's keep moving forward. But the point here is, we have been growing all along. It is not that it has been happening late since 2014, right? If you see certain things here, right? Um, world economy has grown from $30 trillion to 166, right? That is about five and a half times. And we have grown 12 times. That means we have done fairly, I mean, quite well. But, China has done 30 times, right? So, and, let's acknowledge that. And we may not like China as a, for various reasons, but they have achieved it. In fact, if you look deeper, broader, a strong China and is good not only for India but for the world as well, because it gives competition to West. We'll have more choices for goods and services, right? And also it puts some pressure, or rather, in some bring some balance in various geopolitics and geoeconomics. So, I mean, just to put this data and graph here to show that how various countries have been growing, right? Actually, Japan has been shrinking. Their economy has taken a beating. It has stagnated for the last 3 decades. So we have to remember that, despite uh, really hardworking, really smart people, it doesn't mean that our growth and status are kind of guaranteed. even they're struggling for last 3 decades. We should remember that we have not reached their level in terms of institutions, or intellect, or the the capital, or the infrastructure. And if you try to be kind of a chest thumping now itself, I think we'll have really tough time. So again, PPP, I think let me show you where we stand. So where we have been kind of moving over the last 4 5 decades, right? In '85, we were at 10th, and then again 99 10th, and then we moved to 5th in '95, and then we moved to 4th in 2005, and third in actually it happened in 2008. If we go in a graph, right? So ever since we have been here, and it's very difficult to cross over these big numbers, right? We see here, so we are about uh, you know uh, $12 trillion. This data is there only up to 2020. So currently India is at $12 trillion. US is about roughly about not 12, $14 trillion, and US is about $27 trillion. China is about 33 trillion dollars, right? So though China is 5 times bigger economy than India in terms of currency exchange rates based on PPP, they're about 2.5 times bigger. Okay, so that it's not too bad. And US is about 8 times bigger than India in terms of currency exchange rate, but it's only about 2 times bigger than India. So I'm looking at the numbers. So latest number 2023 numbers, which are not here. Okay. So reality is that India has been growing very well since its independence, despite huge initial challenges. I think many people what they don't realize is that where we started, unfortunately, most of us, I mean, many of us don't realize where we started. When we got independence, we were having our literacy rate was only 15%, and women literacy was 8%, and then our life expectancy was 32 years. And if you look at any, if you're not able to feed that 35 crore people even 2 meals, and we had 560 odd states, princely states, to be integrated into few states, 22 states and 7 union territories, right? These are not small things, and a huge, in fact we had no very little manufacturing. In agriculture was entirely and largely dependent on monsoons. Major dams were not there. We are literally going begging in front of the West, primarily US and Canada and other countries for food, right? It took long time to be self-sufficient in food production. And our infantile mortality, infant and child mortality, sorry, maternal and child mortality rates have kind of were terrible, and they've come down to say reasonable levels in the over the last few decades. So now let's look at the growth. This growth matters than talking about the absolute numbers, right? If you see here, I mean, again, there's a big climb. Oh, we are the major, fastest growing economy in the world. That is the kind of the claim that is made. But we have to look at the growths that are happening, annual growth rates that have been happening. The data that I'm using is, so is from the World Bank. You can, go and search for the growth, GDP growth, right? So again, this is based on the current dollar terms, and this is the real economy. I mean, the real growth rate, and essentially inflation adjusted. If you see here, um, you know, the best years were in actually in 89. Okay, so we reached 9.6%, and in 75 it was, again, I think this either, yeah, this is when we declared emergency, so it was 9.1%. And and then we had a good time during 1999, that is 8.8%. In 2010, we had 8.6%. In fact, this is a great thing because world was struggling with the financial US financial crisis and European financial crisis, etc. And we achieved this 8.6% in 2010. And of course, we struggled to sustain it, but again it came back by 2013. uh, so it went up and then it started dropping down. So here, this is when actually, so demonetization happened, started going down, and then COVID hit in 2020, right? So that's when the world struggled with, world economy struggled and world struggled overall, right? So yeah, we grew 9.1% in 2020, but that is largely because of the the bouncing back from the big fall from the earlier year, right? So the key, the growth numbers were the 89, we 88, actually it's 89, 9.6%, and 9.1%, then 8.8%. This is during Vajpayee, this is during Indira Gandhi, this is during Rajiv Gandhi, and this is during Manmohan Singh, and this is during Modi. Okay? But I would not give much importance to this because this is because bouncing from the world, sorry, the COVID issue. So again, I have plotted the same thing here, showing world and India. You see the world is shown in green here. And if you see that for most part of the period, so India has been growing faster than world because, one is our base was low and we had a huge population. So naturally this growth has been there. And if you see this, and growth is there pretty much, in the range of six to anywhere from 5 to 8%, 9%. So and we have to also remember that a lot of our growth is due to population growth. We have been, in fact, we are terrible in controlling the population. Um, so let's look at the per capita numbers. This the macro level aggregate numbers look good, but at individual level, are we really growing per capita, right? Because our the lot of growth, as I said earlier, it is largely, I mean, a lot of it is because of growing population. Yes, per capita GDP is also growing. So again, it's last 6 decades because of various global and local factors. And let's agree that all, I mean, like most of the developing countries, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all have grown fairly well. And in fact, um, uh, you know, um, the Bangladesh has overtaken both Pakistan and India in terms of the per capita GDP. So we may make big climb on the fastest growing economy in the world, the fifth largest economy in the world, and all that. But now, what we generally we've been hearing a lot of negative things about Bangladesh, and we want to implement CAA and RCE to prevent Bangladeshis illegally immigrating to India and all that stuff, right? And some people like the Home Minister. I read somewhere that he called them as termites, right? So they become really role models for rest of the neighborhood. I mean, of course, Bangladesh has a lot of issues in terms of its huge population density, a low-lying area, and its economy is largely in 2 3 areas. It's very not vast, broad-based as India. So largely, Bangladesh economy is based on garments exports and cheap garment exports and also remittances, right? So those are both of them are they have limitation in terms of the growth prospects, right? But we have to remember that the Bengal, which used to be the current Bangladesh, West Bengal, Bihar, part of Assam, and part of Orissa. So this was called the Bengal province or Bengal Suba during Mughal period, was the world's richest province or area in the during 1700s. People don't realize it. So they moved from world's richest geography to the poorest geography in 200 years, thanks to colonization and all kinds of oppressions, suppressions, extractions, and exploitations by British. So at least they're coming back to some level. We hope and wish them good, and also we will hopefully we will also grow as good as them. So I just put some numbers for similar countries like India, Indonesia, Thailand, Pakistan, besides Singapore, etc. Right. So there's another perception that oh, we have been growing only after 1990s. So after the so-called liberalization that is done by MMS and Manmohan Singh and PV Narasimha Rao, right? Yes, they did liberalize, but that was not the sole reason. In fact, most of the countries grew in 90s onwards. You can see the growth period. It's pretty much after 90s, every country started zooming up, right? So it's a lot of it is global factor. In fact, the economic liberalization was not started by PV Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh. I'll show you in the next slides. Okay. And I just want to compare the per capita GDP of India and China in two periods from 1960 to 90. Why I started 1960? Because that is the data that is there in data bank, World Bank data. And if you see here, we got independence from UK in 1947, and China, again, kind of got liberated from West in 1949 when the communists took over China. So essentially, West could not meddle in them anymore. They were never fully colonized. Part of China was colonized by Japan, but there was a lot of they call 100 years of great humiliation from 1840s to 1940s, right? So whereas India was colonized for nearly 200 years from 1700 to 1947, right? So it's roughly about 2 centuries of exploitation by the colonial masters, right? So, based on the data, you can see that India, despite starting at same time, and China had better numbers in terms of health and education in 1940s. At least they were 10 years ahead in terms of the literacy rate, life expectancy, etc. And despite that, so the per capita GDP were more or less, at same rate, and we're going at same rate, right? So this is the thing. In fact, at some points, we were kind of more than China. At 1990, we had more. In 1990, we had per capita GDP higher than China in, in purchasing power parity. So we have to remember that, if we had not done good things in the first 40, 50 years, how would we have reached that, right? Definitely, we have done a lot of things, right? So at the same time, let's look at the population growth. Okay. So this, okay, first I showed 1960 to 1990. You see here, so we have, our per capita GDP based on PPP terms is very similar. In fact, we crossed more than, I mean, we were higher than China at some points, and especially at 1990. Now I look at it from 1990 to current 2022 here. If you see here, we have been growing, but China just exploded from sometime in from 2000 onwards, right? Where's the compounding effect, as Tamil Nadu IT minister, former prime minister, sorry, former finance minister tells it's the compounding effect of growth. Even if we grow 2% extra, that will yield significant higher numbers over period. Just one thing I just wanted to highlight is on the population control, right? It's still most economists and journalists think that okay, population is kind of good population growth is good to have, but I would strongly disagree. Yes, so there is a population demographic dividend and demographic disasters, right? I would say it is what we have is largely combination of these two. If you see this India's population in blue, it has been continuously increasing. China in 1940s, they were 50% more than India, and now we have crossed them, right? So whereas China's growth started significantly, I mean, it went up significantly in 1990s and 2000 onwards, right? One of the reasons, there are many reasons, but one of the reasons is the population stabilization. They had one child policy, and because of that, population started stabilizing. So what is the consequence? Because they don't have to build new schools, new hospitals, new houses, right? The same money is used to improve the quality of those institutions. I mean, the infrastructure in institutions, right? That will have a multiplier effect on many other things. Whereas India, because our population is continuing to grow, we have to spend significant of amount of money on keeping the people fed and basic necessities, right? Schools, hospitals, and things like that, right? So if population growth is the major criteria, so, Bihar should have been the biggest economy in India, biggest for best economy in India, right? Or in UP, right? And similarly, Pakistan should have been the best economic, I mean, best country in terms of economics in all of South Asia. But they're not. Because again, a lot of money is going to provide the basic necessities of growing population. Stabilization population is extremely important. We have very high density of population, our land usage, and this puts enormous pressure on environment and ecology. We simply cannot sustain the growth. So just I'm shifting gear to a little bit on the political side of this one, right? The reason is the uh, economic growth. It happens because of the various policy changes, institutions, traditions, and decisions and actions, right? And who are the major players in terms of in the politics, right? From 1947 onwards, we had Congress on one side, which is largely centrist party. It's not leftist, it's not the rightist. Okay, so they accommodated both, communist and extreme socialists to to some extent capitalists as well, right? In fact, there were no political party in India who were against socialism, socialistic principles, except not Justice Party. It's Swatantra Party of Rajaji, which was started in 1960s. So he started, I think, late 1950s. That was the only party which was more pro-capitalistic, and all other parties were either they were in the center, wanted to have a mix of capitalism and socialism. Of course, everybody was for democracy except for communists. We don't know whether they really liked democracy, but they never got power at center. Okay, I think that's a good thing, right? So right now, the Congress was a dominant political party for first 50 years, and so whereas BJP now is completing about 16 years of central ruling, and 16 is significant, and it's amazing that they started with nothing, and in fact 1980 there were only two seats, and now they have 300 plus seats. So it's amazing political success. But let's see, and they make a lot of big claims on economic success, right? That's why I just wanted to shift my story on the more on the political side of the economic growth, right? So let's look at historically how Jansang was the political front of the RSS before 1980, and Jansang was renamed as a BJP after 1980, right? So all along, Jansang and RSS, their focus has been on the religion and culture. The economy was barely in their agenda, right? And you can go and read about their, historical the priorities and agenda. So they are always on religion and culture, and it's fine because that's what they believe. Everybody has their own, entitled to their beliefs, and our constitution provides provides that right. So we can believe in whatever faith we want, so whether political, economic, or religious or cultural things, right? So it's fine from their point of view, but it was, in my opinion, that's very narrow and somewhat regressive, rather what is insular, right? It's not really global or progressive or essentially global or progressive, and it's definitely not inclusive. Doesn't include. They don't want to include non-Hindus, and even in the Hindu side, there's always this superiorities of certain sections of the society, Hindu society, right? Let's look at you know sorry, I think this is not 1900s, it's 1990s. They means Jansang and RSS, they were more worried about opening economy to West till 1990s. Let me just I'll correct that little later. This is 1990s. And it would mean why they were concerned, because their focus was on religion and culture. And if you open country to Western economies, say for Western companies, and they will promote their culture, right? Westernization. So in during 60s, 70s, and 80s, what was Western culture? It was all about disco, drugs, drinking, divorce, reckless consumption, loose family ties, burgers, pizzas, and all those things, right? So they didn't want those things, and rather they wanted to kind of keep our traditional values, traditional cultures, heritage, and all that, right? I think that's fine. And some of it, a lot of it, we have to inculcate and preserve them. But we should be also open and fairly be open for other possibilities as well, right? So this is what they were till 1990s. In fact, if you see, go back and read about Swadeshi Jagran Manch and other groups of Sangh Parivar, they were so against the Western companies, Western products, and Western cultures, right? And they also tried with the communists and socialists, and during 1977 election, and also during 1989. In 77, after the sorry emergency, they wanted to defeat Indira Gandhi. Yes, Indira Gandhi had to be defeated because she was kind of acting as a dictator during that 70s. It was a difficult period. I don't want to blame or attribute Indira Gandhi only with emergency. Has done so many things. In fact, there are a lot of good reasons why emergency was imposed. I'll create a separate video on that. But um, sorry. Um, so essentially, they allied with the left communists and socialists, against the centrist party Congress in 77, against Indira Gandhi, against Rajiv Gandhi in 89. It's fine. Then we need change at times, and it was good. But what were their focus? Economic focus. They were not for liberalization. They were not for allowing other outside companies in India, either capital or their products, right? So essentially, they were against the external the globalization and allowing global companies, right? I mean, till 90s, so indigenization was the focus of the government as well as the opposition parties, and it is good because it built a lot of capabilities and confidence in us, right? So it is not bad, but at some time, so we became too restrictive, too kind of this. And of course, we have to look at those difficult periods as well in Cold War, and the oil shocks in 1970s, and so on and so forth, right? As again, I'll create a separate videos on this, but let me come back to this. Essentially, they means RSS and BJP, Johnson, they were against external foreign companies coming and setting up here and selling their products and services, right? And now they make big issue saying that, oh, Nehru was a socialist and Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi, they nationalized so many things and all that stuff. Not Rajiv Gandhi, but the fact was that they were more against the kind of outside companies, Western, especially particularly Western companies and cultures. Again, in 1980s, if people remember that, the entire decade, Advani and Vajpayee would mostly focused on Ram Mandir and anti-Pakistan and anti-Muslim sentiments. They had nothing else in their talks, pretty much. And so it was actually Indira Gandhi who wanted to liberalize the economy in 1970s. She had to quickly pull it back because of so much opposition from the left communists. In fact, communists were the major opposition parties in 70s and 80s, right? And socialists in 80s. And she had to withdraw it. And then, in fact, so 1977, Janata Party, in which BJP or Jansang was part of it, they kicked out IBM and Coca-Cola. So George Fernandez was the minister who kicked them out. And I think in one way it's good because Americans were too arrogant and they had to be kicked out and shown their place. But at the same time, it also sent wrong signals to the rest of the West and the other countries who were trying to invest in India, right? So essentially, our integration with the global economy got delayed by a decade because of too strong opposition from this communist, socialists. That is, all these, Lohiyawadis, so the Mulayam and Samajwadi, then Lalu Prasad Yadav, and RSS. Because of them, our liberalization got delayed. Despite that, Rajiv Gandhi was the one who started opening the economy. Right? Let me jump back to this little bit. Um, so in 1984, we started liberalizing on key consumer areas, right? That is, we decontrolled automobiles, electronics, consumer electronics, white goods like washing machines and ACs and things like that, and kitchen equipment and other things, right? Why were they kind of restricted? We had there are different reasons. We had difficult forex situations, and also we didn't want to get sucked into the influence of global big companies as well, right? So in fact, what was our independence? It was independence. Where did we lose our independence? We lost independence to East India Company, right? We have to remember that, right? We didn't want in the East India Company coming back in different form and shape, right? So that fear was there. But anyway, by 1970s, late 70s, we became confident. We were able to deal with them, many countries. Right. So coming back to here, 1980s, you see this in Suzuki, right? And Hero Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki Bajaj, they were all started producing in India and there were no controls, right? So in 1984 they started production. That's why Indira Gandhi was in there, and Maruti Suzuki started in 1983. That Asia during Asian Games. So Indira Gandhi was the one who started liberalizing, and Rajiv Gandhi took it to next level. And Rajiv Gandhi with Sam Pitroda. Rajiv Gandhi was professional pilot. He was going around the world. He was seeing what was happening in the West and what was happening in the Soviet, right? Soviet was struggling, and Mikhail Gorbachev, the Soviet leader, was trying to reform the Soviet Union, and India needed to reform as well. In fact, China reformed, and they moved from uh, completely communist to semi-communist, and they started giving some amount of private property ownership, right? And we also needed to liberalize. There's so much of demand for consumer goods. We cannot put a lot of restrictions forever. We could have done it in 70s, as I said earlier. The communists and socialists, and RSS, they were dead against a lot of these things. They didn't want foreign capital and foreign goods and services, right? And also 70s decade was very difficult because of the two major oil shocks. One, OPEC.
imposed oil embargo on West, and that triggered huge oil price jump. And then also when Iran revolution was there in 1917, that again created a huge oil spike. Right? So we again put the entire the entire world into difficult economic situation. So again, this is on the the 100 cc bikes. You can see this is major change. Earlier we had only SDs, Rajduts and the Enfields. Now we had a very efficient modern technology bikes coming from Japanese. And similarly, there was a huge innovations happening by local companies. We had Kinetic, Luna, TVS, Excel, and then Hero Majestic, and Suvega, and so on and so forth. There was no control on number of production, etc. So there were production controls in 70s because of forex and oil embargoes and other things. But they were removed. Right? These are become big companies now. TVS is a big company, right? Motors is a big two-wheeler, probably the biggest two-wheeler company in the world, right? And Bajaj is one of the biggest one, right? So all of them have become major companies. So they all have a roots in going back to 70s and 80s. And don't say that these are all happened because of Manmohan, sorry, PV Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh and etc. And similarly, we are in the truck space, medium-sized truck space. We had Japanese arriving in 80s, right? So we had DCM Toyota, Swaraj Mazda, Alvin Nissan, and so on and so forth. So these all have become major companies now, and they brought innovative, improved technology, production process, capital, etc. Right? It helps Indian economy as well. And even Tata, with so much competition, they started Tata and Ashok Leyland, they started competing with them with their innovative products. And if you go back to the 1980s, consumer electronics, we had so many Indian brands. You can see all these TV brands, right? So Onida, Videocon, in BPL, there were really big names in the 80s and 90s. Unfortunately, they faded. Some of them are still there. We have Godrej still there, and IFB is not Indian; it's a German, right? Many of them have disappeared because of various local and global factors. There are only few handful of consumer electronics companies today. And then we also started Karnataka government established the electronic city in 1978. Who was the government back then? It was Congress government. Gundura was the chief minister. I think it was Devraj Aras was the chief minister then. And we started the electronic city, essentially a well infrastructured area to be used by electronic industry for domestic and export purposes. 1978. So don't again give credit, a lot of credit to PVN and MMS and the BJP and Modi. So these, it takes decades to seeds to grow into big fruit yielding trees. And IT revolution. We go back now, we are about nearly $300 billion industry. Roughly about 8% of India's GDP comes from IT and IT enabled services. And its seeds were sown in 1960s. You say 1966. This was Baba Committee report. You can see this, the 10-year plan. So that's when we started. TCS was established, in 67. 1967, right? If we do you think that if we did not have the political support, policies, infrastructure support, they would have grown to such a big company? So again, get these dates, and it's none of these things started in 90s and onwards. They were been, in fact, Infosys was started in 1980s. So the ITPL, was started in early 90s, right? ITPL or ITPB, right? So and the EPIP, you can see the all lot of big companies in Bangalore, they're the best there, right? So there's a lot of government support, active support. There are a lot of tax exemptions given, a lot of land was given at cheap rate, a lot of infrastructure was provided. Yes, they had to be given because you have to nurture the industry. Indirectly, it has helped the government. We have grown many folds in terms of our tax revenues, economy, jobs, right? We had to do them. Tax exemption has been given to IT industry for many decades now. How can somebody say that government didn't support them? So this is all nonsense. It has been happening since 60s, 70s, and 80s, and the government has been actively supporting this industry. And the many people, like I've seen so many people like Ram Charan, and so a lot of these biggie, global biggies, they keep criticizing government and other things, and without realizing where we started, how government has been enabling these companies, right? So you see this, the government started Rajiv Gandhi's, in fact, CDOT and CDAC. CDOT revolutionized the communication in 1980s and 1990s. It was started when in 1984, again during Indira Gandhi period, and Rajiv Gandhi and Sam Pitroda took to the next level. Center for Development of Advanced Computing. It was started in 1987. We had to do it because US was putting a lot of trade restriction because of our various space and defense programs. We could not succumb to pressure from US. We had to build our own capabilities, right? So we were building supercomputers in 1980s and 90s. We were building our microprocessors, and in fact we lost that capability. Wipro were manufacturing computers, their own computers. HCL was manufacturing their own computers. And the Zenith was there. There's so many computers who were manufacturing hardware in locally in India. We lost that over last few decades. So all in all, this whole economic growth is not really happening just now. It has been happening since 47. In fact, we've made humongous progress. I think we should remember that. And there are, starting from Nehru to Shastri to Indira Gandhi to even let's give credit to a lot of credit to Morarji Desai Janata Party, because they showed that we can defeat Indira Gandhi and bring her dictatorial mentality to some extent. But again, I will talk about the emergency period separately, because Indira Gandhi has done a lot of great things in terms of advancing economy of India, protecting India's borders, and building institutions and making sure that India remains secular and a relatively peaceful country, right? And you see this the economic growth what we have today, it would not have happened if we didn't have good institutions, good traditions, and in place, right? So you see the institutions like all these NAL, NMDC, and other things. Look at look at how they were named. They were named as Indian, National, Hindustan, Bharat. Are these not really were they kind of came out of colonial mindset, or they were kind of proud of India and Indian heritage and Indian religion? Look at the kind of satellites we had. We launched Aryabhatta in 1975. That was called Aryabhatta. Is it some Muslim name, or is it a Western name? Bhaskara. These were the ancient Indian mathematicians. So his name was given to satellites launched in 1979, and our rocket launch, rockets used for space research, those were called Rohinis, right? So they were really patriotic. They were immensely proud of Indian heritage, and our Hindu heritage, right? If not just India, no, so India is not just the Hindu, right? It's Hindu, Jain, Sikh, Buddhist, and Parsi, and Muslim and Christian, all have contributed for nation building, right? Can we ignore the Parsis contribution? That such a tiny minority, but their contribution in nation building is immense, right? So are the Jains. The Jains were the one who spread the literacy in the 1,000 years ago across India. It was not the Hindu Brahmins. It was the Jains who and then the Buddhists who kind of spread the literacy to masses. right? So look at the Aryabhata, again given to institution. Then I can keep on going on to many of these things, right? So, and then I'll go and show that, how Nehru, Indira, and Rajiv, and even, sorry, Lal Bahadur Shastri all added, built these institutions, they established this great institution. They are yielding a lot of results, right? I just want to show this, we have about 39 CSIR labs, Central Scientific and Industrial Research Lab. These are the labs who do fundamental research in science and technology, which are required for economic growth. If US is the US and West and Japan and China and Taiwan, they have become, kind of economic superpowers. The foundation for them is the scientific science and technology progress. Apart from the capital, and then the entrepreneurial spirit, and then the political environment and other things, social, and this one, science and technology are the major enablers for their economic growth. In fact, US is the biggest economy because of their kind of leaders in the science and technology. We had to start from somewhere. We had very little in 1947, and we had to establish this scientific and industrial research labs. And 39 of them were there they are there now, and 21 of them were started by Nehru. And some of them, and I'll give the little details, right? Nehru established IITs, IIMs, AIMS, NIT, space and nuclear programs, right? NAL, BL, BHL, BML, right? They were started, and they have been serving the country, and they are helping to come, build the country. They are able to, kind of helping to protect our country's borders, right? Maintain the integrity of the country, right? HAL has been strengthened. They have, built, literally, hundreds of aircrafts, including Su-30s, Sukhoi 30s, and so on and so forth. They've been maintaining them, right? And so Vikram Sarabhai led the space program, and Baba Homi Baba led the atomic energy program, right? And Indira Gandhi took these programs to the next level. Built, established the ISRO. I mean, there was a prior organization, but ISRO was further strengthened. She brought Satish Dhawan from Caltech after sad demise of Vikram Sarabhai in 1960s, right? And we had U.R. Rao, Kalam, and others who contributed for further growth of ISRO and DRDOs, etc. Right? And if you see the CSIR labs, look at them. As I said, Nehru started 21 of the Indira Gandhi 6. There were 4 of them started in before independence, but they were significantly strengthened after independence, because pre-independence, they were started by individuals, and they didn't have sufficient resources. The government after independence gave immense support to them, right? You can see which one was started before independence, and in fact, this column was added in the Wikipedia by me. Okay, so that so that we know and we understand and we appreciate when these things were started, right? You see the kind of the breadth of these things, these labs, and they've been really serving the country. They're spread all over the country, right? Let's look at them. They're distributed all over the country, because you have to make sure that the growth is geographically distributed. Every part of the country, kind of makes progress. It provides employment opportunities, and also there are natural advantages to many of these researchers, right? So, and they played immense role in handling the COVID situation. All of these things have either testing and doing, developing various kits, methods for handling the recent COVID situation. You can go and check their the Wikipedia page and their website, and see the kind of contributions they've been making. Unfortunately, they're kind of lost limelight in the last 20 years, and it's now time for government to put more money and focus onto the CSIR labs, and so that they establish better relationship with academics and industries, and bring more innovations and inventions, and enabling us economically and politically. So with that, I just I want to conclude that the economic progress, whatever we have been doing in the last 10 years under Modi's regime, it is largely due to natural progress and result of earlier regimes and policies. Global trends in digital technology, earlier from some foundations of Aadhaar, which was started in 2008 by Manmohan Singh and Nandan Nilekani and others. National Payment Corporation was established in 2012, which is the agency behind the UPI. They were the technology which enabled us for further digital leveraging the digital technologies, right? So, telecom revolution has been happening for that last 40 years, all the way going from C dot, which was established in 1984, right? At the same time, I don't want to say that nothing happened under Modi last 10 years. Definitely, many good things have happened. Infrastructure growth has happened, and it has been happening. It's not just infrastructure; it happened only in the last 10 years. And most of the dams which have been critical for green revolution and feeding the country, that happened before 2000. And we have seaports, airports. They were all developed. Most of them were developed before Modi came to power. They say, yeah, we created more airports, and most of them were small, tiny airports. Most of the big airports, they were built before Modi came to picture. Two of the biggest airports, the Bangalore and Hyderabad, they were established in during UPA two, right? UPA one and two, and Mumbai and Delhi airports significantly enhanced and in terms of capacity and the features and comfort and other things in during UPA one and right. So my request is, please take a broader, longer view and start believing that Modi has done the economic miracle. No, it is not. It's just a natural and normal progression that has happened. And whatever we are today is, in fact, the result of the last 75 years. It is not last 10 years. In fact, I would say that last 2 or 3 millennium, a lot of things we are lucky to get so many things from, we can go back to Ashoka's period, even Buddha's period, even Vedic period, right? So a lot of great things have come from there. So, please stop chest thumping. Oh, saying that we have become the biggest, fastest growing economy, fifth largest economy. So those are all narrow, bullshit. So, so with that, thank you for listening my long talk. Hopefully, it gives some data points. I want to create a lot more, topics in shorter videos. Thanks again. Have a good day, good uh, future, and let's progress well. Not only economically, socially, and also environmentally as well, because we are really in the name of growth, we are really destroying nature. I think it's highly unsustainable. We'll have to find a happiness with lesser GDP growth and lower GDP per capita. I think so the GDP growth alone will not bring happiness and health and peace to our country or global, right? So we have to really think different. Thanks again. Have a good day.